Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Board of Education for tonight, Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. And the first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the agenda is the first of the public comment periods. Just to briefly recap the rules, anyone wishing to speak to the board will have 3 minutes to do so. When you come to the podium, please state your name and your relationship to the district. We'll have 3 minutes to address the board. By law, we are not permitted to address individual student or personnel concerns here in the open session. If you have a concern that needs to be dealt with after the meeting, something that requires follow-up, we ask that you contact the district clerk, who is sitting directly behind me. The number is 762-8100, extension 319, and the email is browns@binghamtonschools.org. And with that, if anybody would like to come up to the podium, please do so at this time. I see a lot of no nods from the group, so this would be a quick closure of the public comment period. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes for the work session and regular meeting held July 15, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve and accept the minutes? Moved by Albert, seconded by Marianne. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Item 7A, unfinished business. We'll be continuing the discussion of the elementary attendance zones, and we'll turn this over to the superintendent.
Thank you. I got it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stand at the podium and just share some information. And while I'm doing that, board members, I have printed out the a set of data that I have forwarded to you prior to tonight's meeting. And I've added a couple more pieces of information. So last month, Steve, would you mind if I have a microphone? Last month we had come together to talk about the elementary attendance zones. At the end of our meeting, there were several suggestions that were raised amongst board members. And so tonight what I'm going to show you is the result of those suggestions. And just to refresh our memory, this is a map of our elementary attendance zones. And we have over here, all the way over to the west, in the purple color is Jefferson, bordered by Forest Man, and then across Main Street, Woodrow Wilson in the green. Continuing clockwise, the yellow is Roosevelt, green, Calvin Coolidge, brown, Ben Franklin, and then Center City, where we're sitting right now, crossing the river, is MacArthur in the blue. And that's where our attendance zones, how they look. Now, I mentioned last month rather, that we have not evaluated this for well over 40 years, and our demographics have most certainly changed. We had agreed that we'd have a number of objectives to try to rebalance enrollment, and I just had some discussions on, shared some data with you on sizes of classes, sizes of numbers of sections, how many students were in buildings, and that could be one of our objectives. To maintain average class sizes of 6 to 18, and when I say average, I want to be clear. It's near impossible in a school because we don't have grade levels where there's the same number of students in every grade level. So often we have these flips, right? You may have a grade level that has a total number of 45 students, and then the next grade might have a total number of 67 students. And so based on the numbers of students, we determine how many students are in a section. It's really hard when you have 2 sections to open up a third section. You have to get to a fairly, over 18 in order to make it, well, over about 24, 25, if you're going to really then start to expand, like when you have 50 students. And then you'll get to that 16 number. If you have 21 students, 22 students, What we typically do in the district is we try to cap it there. In other words, it's not going to get larger. We have a neighboring school that has 14 students in each of the sections. A new student enrolls in that building, and we say for the remainder of the year, you're going to go to that neighboring school, and we fill up those sections. So that's how we adjust it. And we do that to be fiscally responsible, because if we were to try to open up another class, and we have 3 sections of 14 each, right? And while it might sound great, when students are not, you'll see some other data later on tonight, in attendance, it gets low numbers, and it actually becomes challenging to conduct instruction that's collaborative and cooperative when you have smaller numbers. So in any case, I wanted to emphasize it's average 16 to 18, average. In a building, there might be a grade level that has more students in those sections than other grade levels. To also create equitable class sizes, I already mentioned that across the district, and explore the uses of our buildings for revenue streams. And one question that was asked last month was, Tony, what were some ideas? What has happened in the region? What have people come to you in the community and ask for space? Like, what are some thoughts about the space, right? And to work to preserve our neighborhood schools, that we're not looking to rezone in a way that takes out West Side School, and now those students are going to go to the South Side. We're not looking at those big shifts. And other more ways that we can create efficient transportation runs. So potential uses for collective space. So when I say collective space, right now we do rent some of our spaces. So for example, at Woodrow Wilson, there are two pre-kindergarten classrooms that we collaborate with the enrichment, family enrichment, and they provide pre-K services. It's not district teachers, but they have those spaces that they are collaboration with. We have the Handicap Association, HCA, which I may have changed their name by start pausing, didn't I? HCA rents some space for MacArthur for pre-kindergarten. So we have UHS clinics in our spaces, right, and that we have collaborations with. We have Family and Children's Services over at East Middle School. So we use our spaces within the community. However, we've used this space in Columbus to create an alternative education program down the hall, Patriot Academy. Is alternative education, district alternative education, where it's a smaller setting, where it's created in a different way. Could that take place within one of our elementary schools? I'm not necessarily saying secondary could be an elementary alternative education space. Don't have that answer. That space down the hall utilizes about 5 classrooms to service some students. Our BOCES, our BT BOCES is expanding in CTE opportunities, career and technical education opportunities, and so they're always looking for space. Okay? Is there a program up on the hill that might come out into the community that might benefit the community and benefit those students who need there? Neighboring districts, Johnson City has, superintendent has said to me a couple of times, let's talk. You and I need to talk. We're bordering districts. I think there might be some collaborative things we can do if you have space in your district. I mentioned rental spaces for community resources, and then other thoughts and suggestions. Really, the sky's the limit. If it's benefiting the community, and of course benefiting and still being safe for our students to be in school. So one of the objectives again was in looking at redistricting. By doing so, how does it take possibly 2 or 3 empty spaces here, 2 or 3 empty spaces here, 4 spaces here, and 6 spaces here, and create that empty space in a location in a building that then could be utilized for something else. What the beautiful part of that too is that in the event that the city starts to grow and we need more space for education, we still own that space. Right? If we wanted to open up Columbus School as a school in the future, we own it, we could do that. We have the physical space to do it. Other districts, I know Union Endicott had emptied an entire building, and instead of selling it, they turned it into like a mini incubator. And so high school students go there, tire ventures, and they explore different occupations. I just wanted to further clarify that, and any and all of these can be certainly explored. This is the diagram I showed you last month as well. It just has the dots that show you where the students are living, different colors for different districts, along with yellow dots where the schools are. I wanted to next talk about, and I'm calling it scenario 1, I could have called it an A, I could have called it July 15th scenario. It doesn't mean there's a 2 or 3, there could be a 2 or 3, this one could be changed and shifted. So I just took all the suggestions from last month and listed them here, and I'm going to walk you through what the impact is on our student population. So first of all, this scenario, all of these scenarios collectively, all 4, by doing all 4 of these things, impacts 331 students. So the total population is 2,266. Okay, so 331 students would be impacted. One of the suggestions was currently our English as a new language, ENL students, are serviced at Woodrow Wilson, Franklin, and Roosevelt. So if we use Main Street and Court Street, just think of that as a line that goes through our city. And the reason for taking those students out of Woodrow Wilson is the majority don't live in the Wilson catchment area. They live on the south side. They live amongst MacArthur, Horace Mann, and Thomas Jefferson. And then by going to Wilson, when they finish Woodrow Wilson School, they don't get to stay with their peers. They go to East Middle School, while everybody else at Wilson goes to West. So if we were to have 2 East Side schools be the cluster schools for the service, then if we took all, what we do is they took all the students that live south of Main Street, the court, that are going to Wilson, and sent them to Franklin, and anybody north, transport them to Roosevelt. So we'd go from 3 clusters to 2. And this is a population of students. Interestingly enough, we used to have, Horace Mann was also a cluster at the ENL school, and so was Calvin Coolidge, and we moved it from 5 to 3 because of other needs. So that's the first goal. Then I took students at Franklin, west of Telegraph Street, okay? You look on the map, and those streets that are all connected all the way to MacArthur, and moved them to MacArthur. The reason for that is because I took students that were at MacArthur. Okay. Yeah. I forgot to hit a comma down. I took all the students that were in Center City from MacArthur and moved them to Roosevelt. So currently, right now, there are students that are sitting. I'm going to walk through the numbers with you in a minute. I moved those to Roosevelt. Students at Wilson, north of Route 17. You look at that map. I'll go back here for a moment to this one. You see this? There's the highway running through here. There are some students that live way up there. They're actually going to be closer to the Roosevelt Elementary School. We're transporting everybody already in the yellow, so they could go on those bus lines. Those students would go to Roosevelt. And then students at Wilson, east of and including Hudson, south of and including Lydia, and east of including Oak Street, would move down to Horace Mann. Now, in doing this, what this particular scenario does, and I use an arbitrary line. I looked at the numbers of students that were there. This scenario does is it opens up space for Woodrow Wilson Elementary School. And the previous board, when they were working on looking at an enrollment study, was leaning to Wilson for its potential in contributing to the community because of its location. It's in the, tucked in the corner of the city, if you will, on the left-hand corner. But it's also very close in proximity to BOCES for shared services, and it's a large building that already has a significant number of open classrooms. So, looking at this scenario, I'm going to walk you through what this ends up doing. So this is in front of you. Each street, what I have printed out, is the current building, the street, where those students would then go to, and how many students it impacts. The Roosevelt Milleller, that's the students that are at Carlisle, and a couple of houses around there. So I think we have 47 students actually living at Carlisle right now. Those other students are in houses right there on the Street. You can see with each school, with each building, If you would turn your attention for a moment to page 4, that's what this chart is. Even after I created it, I was explaining to Steve and Carrie. I had to walk through it like, why is it things in different colors? This is how I did it. So if you read left to right, you're going to see our schools listed: Ben Franklin, Calvin Coolidge, Horace Mann, right from top to bottom. If you look at Ben Franklin, 297 continue all the way over to the end. There's currently a total of 341 students at Franklin. And I want to clarify, this is kindergarten through 5th grade. I did not include the pre-K population. I did not include the pre-K population. For a number of reasons. First of all, believe it or not, there's about 30% turnover in pre-K students. In other words, if 30% is not realized in the first 2 years in our district, which is interesting in and of itself. So 341. In that particular scenario, 297 would stay at Franklin. Remember I said we'd shift Telegraph Street? Right. There's 44 students that are living in that area that they would go from Franklin to MacArthur. Okay. Now if you go down to Calvin Coolidge, there's currently 269. 242 would stay. There's currently 27 students that would go to Roosevelt. Horace Mann, 210, there's 210 because we're not looking in those scenarios of shifting anybody out of Horace Mann, and so on. And that's how you read that. Now those 27 that are at Coolidge that would go to Roosevelt, those are the students that are at the far end of Robinson Street. They're very, very far. One Depot, and as you move up towards Roosevelt. MacArthur, there's 384 K through 5 students, 47 students. There's 47 students right now living here in Center City that currently are bused over to MacArthur, over the bridge and so on, and then bused up to Roosevelt. Thomas Jefferson, we didn't do any changes to borders that would impact Thomas Jefferson, so 268. Those students being added. One of the challenges with Thomas Jefferson is because it's already, and then Horace Mann, it's because it has mostly 3 sections, 2 sections, 2 grade levels of 2 sections and 3 sections. In order to shift, if you were to shift boundaries, you have to take quite a few number of students out of there in order to make any space available. Because all the classrooms are being utilized, and those 2 classrooms that aren't have to be available for bumps in classes. So you really have to, if you think about it, if you eliminate a class 20 times, you have to pull like 120 students out of the building, and you already have 268. So you're either, and what would the purpose for that be? So it's interesting because we were talking about some of the lines there. Woodrow Wilson. Again, if you read across, 361 students, 22 students, that would be 22 ENL students that are there now, would go to Franklin. 96 would go to Horace Mann. 37 would go to Roosevelt, leaving 206 remaining. So Woodrow Wilson in the scenario would begin to look like Horace Mann in terms of its occupancy. Again, that's pretty, all those suggestions, well, what if we did this, what if we did this, collectively together. I'm going to pause there and let you look at that data set again. Again, it reads the same way if you're reading top to bottom now. I'm just simply saying Ben Franklin, the new Ben Franklin, when the scenario takes place, would have 297 students originally from that catchment area. They would gain the 22. You have 319, and they lost 44 to MacArthur. It's a big math problem. Good.
If you could put the map up there again that shows all the dots,
Sure.
Which is, I think, in preparation for this meeting, Steve and I were talking when we went to the conference in Albany. So basically, when you look at the neighborhoods and the overlap there's certain schools where there's a line where the kids can go either way.
Yeah.
So you've basically taken that map and put it in numbers, what you've done.
Yes.
Yeah. Like in Central City, you're moving those kids to Roosevelt.
Right. So
We talked about doing that.
Yeah, so that was a suggestion last month, so
Right.
I took
Right.
these orange dots, which are representing the park, they're right
That's
through
right.
here.
Those kids will go
I
north.
looked up the addresses, how many students were on each street,
Right.
and that's what that chart is, and counted the number
Exactly.
of students.
So your reasoning behind all of this is really based on that.
Yeah.
That diagram is very important.
Right, it was the suggestions of the board came up with last month to say, well, what if we did, here, what were some concerns
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
terms of those, these students, safety. For example, having water here, fridges to come over to school, which is right here.
Right.
Yes, it's a brand new school, but we're going to get a brand new school up there.
Thank you.
So how would it impact the kids, like the time that they would be on the bus being transported?
Yeah, not minimally. For our elementary buses, and we're addressing the transportation concern because of all of the needs, our homeless students, transportation. Those random dots that are like up there, those are homeless students that decided to come to Binghamton, to stay to come to Binghamton, that kind of stuff. And special education services at BOCES. Right now, we're undergoing a transportation study with BOCES to look to see how BOCES, transportation through BOCES, could provide that transportation and lift that off of the responsibility of the district. That is the biggest barrier, not barrier, but challenge, I guess you say, with how many buses. It's when we have a bus that has to go out to East Learning Center before it comes back to pick up middle school students, for example. Yeah. Now, with 10 square miles, our bus runs run 40 minutes and then they have to be there, go back to pick up middle school students to come back. So when you think of a 7:50 drop, the kids have to be elementary 7:50, and then middle schools, they have to be there at 8:30. Which shouldn't happen. Good
I
question.
just had a couple questions. So I know this is how it's been done in the past, but is it anything that we could maybe fix? I guess I feel like E&L kids have enough challenges as it is. I don't understand the clustering. It seems like services should come to the kids. What's best for them is probably to be with people from their neighborhood who they know. We talk about neighborhood schools, but we're taking 56 kids who have the challenge of also learning a new language and putting them, like transporting them out of their space.
Two things. One, we had to look at the class load for our E&L teachers, right? And so you start to do that, and based on where students lived, you had a need for 0.25 in this building, and then you had a need for 0.75 in this building, then you had a 1.0 maybe in this building. And for the teacher to move from one building to the next to try to provide those services, it was just very chaotic. We don't have enough. At 4.5% E&L population, it's not large enough. It's like we don't have self-contained classrooms. Our self-contained classrooms that we have in just 3 buildings now, those students come from all over the city. We don't have enough staff. That's the other piece. We don't have enough E&L teachers. We don't have enough E&L teachers to fund it, to support that. But it's also the cost associated with doing that. It's a factor.
And then with the big decrease at Wilson, and I know it's like too soon for the year, but what happens with all those staff people? So like you're talking about 8 sections left.
Yeah. So this is not happening for 3 more years. Let's put the thing about this.
Right.
This is why this is important to have the conversations now to plan for that. We are anticipating a large number of retirees next year. At the same time, we're relocating our Roosevelt staff. So it is a big puzzle to figure out how many staff do we really need for that transition, and then when they go back there. And there's more retirements, unfortunately, to come. So the timing of this is really good timing in terms of staff. No one's going to lose their job. Hopefully, they won't lose positions. Now, each year, if I were to show you a chart, how many elementary sections we had 10 years ago, and you looked at time after, you would see The decrease. The national, and this is not, I should have said, this is not taking into account a continued decline in our enrollment. This is assuming that nothing changes.
Does this free up enough space at Wilson to make it rentable, usable, productive? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'll mention it at the end, but I invited the board. We do a walkthroughs of our buildings, and so I'm going to shifting the day to the Tuesday for the board run to do a walkthrough of Woodrow Wilson, just so you can see that building and see Thomas Jefferson and see Horace Mann, and just like I think it's important for those of us who have been in the buildings, I can visualize it. There are about 6 empty spaces now. Now I say empty, and I did this. I'm sorry, I should have brought this wrong page last month. Last month I went through a chart that showed how many classrooms were available classrooms, and then how many classrooms were needed, and I made the quote-unquote decision on shared spaces in the classroom. So right now, for an education, if you have 4 empty classrooms, and right now you're one of 3 teachers sharing a classroom space because you're doing reading intervention out of that classroom space, what would you do? I go to the principal and say, are those classrooms being used? And then have my own classroom, right? And so that's what happens. There are literally empty spaces that are not being used every minute of the day in that building, and on top of that, there are spaces that are being utilized and shared in ways that could be, or are not being shared that could be shared. So all math interventionists have their own space, our special ed teachers have their own space, and so on. And when I say space, I mean classrooms that are intended to serve as a whole classroom. So yeah, I know that there was 6, and so that would absolutely be a small school, a portion school.
I have a couple of things I'd like to talk about. I am very, very concerned about the way we have chopped up the ward. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but I live on Elm Street from Lydia down to Clinton. That's the ward. That's the neighborhood. Those kids going to Mann that doesn't make a lot of sense. The other thing I'd like to suggest is that we consider the fact that there's going to be, within the next 3 years, a large, and I'm sorry, I have a cracked tooth, so I just put on a clove because it's the only thing that helps until I can get in to see the dentist. But there's going to be a large housing unit built on Clinton Street. It's going to have 100 and some odd units. There's one on the corner of Clinton and Murray that's going to have 60 units. We are going to maybe see an increase in that neighborhood of children who want to go to the school. And I think that many people in the ward will see this as, I hate to say discriminatory, like Wilson is being picked out now, kind of 96 kids going to Horace Mann from those neighborhoods. I don't have any problem with the peripheries, although I'm kind of wondering how you're going to get the kids down from Ely Park to Hill and over to Roseville in a timely fashion. But to take that center chunk out of the ward seems to not only be disruptive to neighborhood relationships, the kids who know each other and want to go to the same school. These are concerns that I know I have heard from several parents, and I have said, we are going to be discussing it tonight. That chunk of the ward is very, very important to the ward.
Other board members comment? So it's on this image, it's like, forgive me, but kind of roughly drawn. It's this section, and the reason, the question was how could we create space, and that's the building that has the most empty space now. At this, it doesn't have to be this. I would be asking the board, then from where, if not there, was here's Wilson up here. Right. So when we think about our seeing our school, walking by our school, that neighborhood surrounding it, this section did used to go to Roosevelt.
That second green section there includes the Lydia Street, the Clinton Street, all of that.
Yeah.
What's the white section in the middle?
No students are living there. It must be near the cemetery. Yeah. So it's right here. It's right here. And they used to go to Roosevelt back years ago.
That would have been many years ago. Yeah. My son is 50, and that was always part of,
I know when
established perception. I'm sorry, my clothes.
That's okay. But in any case, I'm just saying, in light of where Horace Mann's located, right? Where, if not then open to suggestions. I was looking at this, saying who's closest to this school? Who are their neighbors?
Yeah.
Who are their school neighbors? When they go to middle school, they are going to school with.
When you're talking where I live, Lydia Street, all of those areas, you know, I think up to Clinton Street, those are the neighbors. Those are who people think their neighbors are. And a neighborhood school like Wilson is very important in that section.
Those students would still be going to school together. They just would not be going to the students who left.
No, you're saying Lydia Street and Carter Brigade Street and Clinton Street. I see it at the bottom of this first page.
Sure.
That's the part that I'm really concerned about, because that is.
Dickinson, Winding Way, Lydia,
Yeah.
Murray, Erie, Franklin, Carlotta
And that
Valley.
seems, you know, perceptually, if that's the word, closer to Wilson than to Horace Mann. You know, I think parents would have a problem saying, oh, now we've got to go to Horace Mann, why do we have to go to Horace Mann? And then when you say to them, well, we want to free up some space at Wilson so we can rent the space out. I don't think that's going to go over well. I'm being extremely honest and telling you what we feel, or what I'm hearing. I'm at the Neighborhood Watch, I'm at the Clinton Street Revitalization Project. Something like this, 3 years down the road, it's going to look a little different than it looks now. So I'm wondering if taking that chunk out of it is going to have to, in 3 years, maybe require a review again of how this is going to work. So I bring that up for what it's worth.
Good question. I mean, again, the board's the board decision. Correct. So if you feel as the board, the full board, there's another way to look at this, then absolutely, you know, just tell me, I'll run the numbers and show you
Can I
that.
ask a very contentious question? Which is the priority of creating a space that we can rent out, or fulfilling the needs of our kids first? And I know how you feel about it. So it's almost a rhetorical question.
It is a rhetorical question. I would add that I think we, the collective, the board, and myself, have to be fiscally minded as well. We have a foundation aid that has indeed realized now, based on our enrollment, we're not getting any more money. We've had to make last year $4 million worth of cuts. I'm going to be faced with making probably another $4 million worth of cuts this coming year. What does that mean? Are we going to give up high school programming?
Yeah.
Are we going to have to say we have to have these classrooms, which have been very supportive of keeping small and continuing to keep small, but do we now need to move into other areas to look at those kinds of consolidations?
Well, and that raises the other question. Parents are going to say, are we being consolidated out of existence over at Wilson? That's going to be a concern for a lot of parents. For such a chunk of the kids to come out of Wilson when it's not being affected. And I understand the geographics from your point of view, but if you look at it from on the street and the families that I know, this is going to be a concern for them, a very deep concern. And I know nobody showed up at our meeting that they should have, but that doesn't mean that they won't hear about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other piece too is that the school looks at Horace Mann now. So it's not like consolidating them out of, I mean, if I put this in perspective, in terms of the numbers of students that are being educated at them, the same number of students that are being educated at Horace Mann right now.
At Horace Mann,
Horace Mann, there's about 206 students being educated at Horace Mann right now.
Right.
This plan would have 206 students educated. So it's not, you know, I'm not saying I'm trying to get all the kids in other buildings and not utilize that building at all. It's still would be functioning as an elementary school.
Is it possible for us to look at alternatives?
Sure,
Or at least for
absolutely.
that chunk of those kids, that chunk, like I said, the peripheries make sense. But that particular chunk of the ward, it doesn't really make any sense to someone who lives in the ward.
Sure. What would you suggest?
I don't know, that's what I'm opening the discussions to talk about.
I don't know what it would,
Maybe it's not Woodrow Wilson, maybe it's not going.
yeah, I don't know what it would look like. I'm open to other possibilities, but here's what to know. No matter where we do it, it's gonna be exciting to whatever school it's in.
Or is there?
I don't think the purpose, let's be honest too, the purpose was not about freeing up space in other places and to make money. It's a really big school.
that we have to fill. And a lot of kids are, and that our enrollment, yes, and we agree to that, so now this is part of that. And our enrollment's dropping, nobody's gonna move in those buildings. Those buildings are building, hopefully people will get housing that don't have housing right now, but there ain't nobody coming other than one by one or whatever, like there's no influx. Not just in the first ward, but anywhere, Binghamton, anywhere in Boone County, there's no big influx. So I don't think they'll have a problem, no matter where it is. I'm fine with like, let's look at some options, but any school is, the parents are gonna have a hard time. Because we do have neighborhood schools, and we prided ourselves on neighborhood schools, so they're all neighborhood schools. And I understand what you're saying about first ward, you're gonna hear the same thing from name them all, you know?
Right, but here's the thing, you know, like I said, we're willing to give up our, not that we have a choice, but our peripheral children, but the core is the difference. I mean, if you went into TJ and you said very, very close streets next to TJ, we're gonna be switched to somebody else, they might have a problem with that, you know?
Well, that's what, I mean, it's gonna happen somewhere, right?
So do we make smaller spaces in many schools and affect less students, or do we do the one big chunk at Wilson?
I just want to throw my 2 cents in. I'm thinking of the word equilibrium here. Equilibrium, you know, want to promote a balance. So preserving neighborhood schools is a mantra. That's something we have thrived on for over 100 years. I think we want to do this, and I'm listening to you, Marion. There could be a number of changes to the 3-year projection.
Mm-hmm.
So any of the moves could be affected by anything. I think we do have to pay close attention to the Clinton Street project, because there's $10 million going into that. As you mentioned, there's going to be housing, could be revitalization of that area.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's something we'll be looking at, between now and 2028. But in terms of having to balance this out, there's going to be, peaks and valleys here, We're not going to have everybody happy. We're going to try to preserve our neighborhood school concept. But in terms of getting to some equilibrium where we have balanced classes so that we can get good instruction, so we don't have teachers, we don't have this issue of you teach in one school, I teach another, you have 10 kids, I have 18. That's not good. So, we have to look at the academic impact of what we're talking about. The big issue is not just the numbers. The numbers are going to be translated into academic performance eventually. Is this going to help our school district improve academically by having more balanced classes, improved instruction, kids happy in the buildings that they're in? And we also know that moving kids around at that delicate age of K through 5 is something we need to be careful of. There's some districts right now, Tanya, they're going, I was up in the Rochester area, they're going to K1, 2 buildings, 2, 3 buildings, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're moving elementary kids 3 times in 5 years, which isn't good either. So this is what we're doing here is very delicate work. Tanya, I highly commend you for the degree of mathematics involved in this. This is incredible stuff. What you've given us tonight is a lot of hard work. So I hope this can help us in our planning in the next 3 years. But I do believe there'll be some shifts to what we see here because of what could happen in any neighborhood, not just Clinton Street.
One of the things that the board had shared at the beginning was not use our schools to keep us out. Right? I mean, mathematically, this is 331 moves. We have a school of 206. Right? Advocate to take all 206 enforcement after trying to build that school, but we'll know students. Right? I mean, that's another option.
Yeah.
Right? But I know that's not an option on the table because that's not what we're here to do. So just looking geographically, if not that section, if not Wilson, what are your suggestions?
I just want to be sensitive to something, because Marion brought up the phrase, we feel like we're being erased from the history. And, we really didn't want to erase anyone from the history. We've got 3 people at this table that were here when the decisions were made 3 years ago. And, I can tell you based on the public conversations we had at the time, there was not any coalescing around closing Man ever. There was not any coalescing around closing Roosevelt ever. But if anything was potentially slated to be closed, it was Wilson at the time. And we felt strongly, based on what the community wanted, that we saw the value in keeping all 7 buildings. You know, maybe not necessarily the best thing long-term in the district's interest to have all 7, but we wanted to be responsive to the community and to make this work. But we knew by doing that, one of the buildings was going to have a very different configuration ultimately than what it does now. So it's not altogether a surprise to see this. I'm sensitive also to the fact that people feel the neighborhood identity is disrupted. And so who moved my cheese? Why am I going to this school now versus the other? And there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason for it, except it just seemed like a good idea to somebody. And that's, I think, how it's going to get seen by the affected people in that part of the community. But you know, it's the same amount of people, it's the same amount of buildings, and it's going to put its pressures on one building in one way or another. So, I personally, I'd be open to seeing something else. I don't know what suggestions I would want to make. I feel like everything that I had identified last time was just sort of like the low-hanging fruit in a sense, based on just where things line up, and if you're close to the border, what if we moved it from one to the other, and here and there, and we had all the great work that went into putting this document together, and to see the streets, and you move from this building to another one, and geographically it seems to make good sense. I'm not saying I'd be ready to vote on this now. We promised we wouldn't vote on it during the summer, and it doesn't sound like we're ready to do that anyway, which is fine. I'd be open to a scenario 2 or 3, but I don't know what else I would want to adjust at this time.
I just wanted to also make sure we're taking into consideration how this socially impacts the kids as well. Because I remember one of the things I used to see, and it's still a thing, but even with the kids in Saratoga, they're like, we're Toga kids. We have grown people who still consider themselves as Toga kids because that's where their community was. So now we take these kids from their community and now we're putting them into the horseman community. How is that going to affect them socially? You know what I mean? And like how they identify themselves too, you know?
Sure. The district has been in the past 10, 12 years through a number of transitions. They've been temporary moves, right? MacArthur splitting into locations, creating identity for several years, trying to bring them back. I've already started to talk to many schools right now are going through consolidations.
Yes.
Many schools, like consolidations of other districts, district consolidations. Many schools are going through the same process we're going through. Horseheads just did this, and they've closed the building and redistrict. And I'm looking at the resources and talking to those superintendents and saying, what are the things that we want to be mindful? I have PR working on a document to help support transition, right? And then it's working with our very talented staff of social workers and those families and meeting and saying, what do you need? What are you seeing? How can we create a sense? Maybe they don't, forgive me, don't may not be the case, but you know, it used to be, you know, you grew up on a street and everybody knew each other, right? And you like looked after each other and you learned how to parent from the parent across the street. And it doesn't seem to be quite that same now, I know from my own personal experience. Maybe there's an opportunity to create more of that amongst the students, that sense of identity too. We could leverage that. And I think that's another rationale to look at areas, right? Because they are a community, how can they maintain that sense? You know, it kind of happens now in Center City, but unfortunately, when they go to MacArthur and then they go to East. They have to start all over again.
That's right.
For the most formative years. And so this addresses that. Same thing with those E&L students. They get to know a space and then they don't know anybody because we don't have the numbers, nor do we have the staff to create 2 separate hubs on the secondary level for E&L. Financially, I would not advocate for that.
During the evening hours, is there like, do we rent out spaces to orgs during the evening hours where they can do more community impact or community activities and stuff like that in the building?
You know, there were conversations, the boards in the past have had conversations about, is this an opportunity, you know, we're building roads, it's an opportunity to build like a community center attached to a school on this side of town, right? Is there land over there? That was the conversation that we had, part of the conversation that we had. I mean, our buildings are available to our community to rent. If it's for profit, if it's not for profit, you know, we just ask for some liability pieces so they can absolutely be utilized for that.
I mean, we used to do night school at the high school
Yeah.
for like 150
Saturday
years.
school as well.
We would have the school during the day, and then from 6 to 9, we would educate adults who wanted to come back to high school. That went on for
Cindy
a long
Broom
time.
has reached out informally and said, you know, can we have a conversation about when that Roosevelt Elementary School was built? Is there a way that we can bring education at night to the families in that area? So that'd be great. But those are the kinds of things we can use our buildings for with that cell, the close proximity.
Could I suggest that, building on what Steve just said, that we look into this a little bit more and see if maybe we can at least say with chunk some part of what I'm talking about, and see if there is another alternative to what we want to do.
Absolutely.
I understand what you're trying to do, but I also understand the impact on the ground. And it's gonna be very impressive.
Sure.
As I see those kids, they do know each other. The parents not so much anymore, but the kids do. The kids know each other. So for one kid who lives on Elm Street, who's gonna say goodbye to his friend on Lydia Street, who's gonna go to, and they're right next to each other, you know? Some of those backyards even hit together. This is the thing, I mean, I can see north of Maine, all of that stuff, Ely Park, yes, I can understand that. It's that one little chunk I'm not sure about.
It could be not that chunk, if you could go move someplace else. I literally was just thinking geographically, where are the students furthest from Woodrow Wilson right now? That are close to a major road, right?
But perceptually, they are closer in their minds to Wilson then, and that's
just explain what it is.
No, I
No, so I would invite right now, and if you don't have, I don't know, I'm hearing a little bit of, I'm not sure what else. I took everything that was suggested in July. I would encourage you to be thinking about it and like email me, like this is what my thoughts are, and I can bring all those thoughts to the next meeting. If I have enough time, I'll bring the data like this.
One thing I think you saying right up front, you know, we want to preserve neighborhood schools, but also saying that all of the 7 buildings, that each one of them is going to have to give up something. We're going to be equitable in terms of, you know, we're not looking at one school gaining, another losing. That just every school is going to have to give up something, maybe more than others, but if that doesn't work out, mathematically, let me know, but that each school would be giving up something to make this work.
Sure, I don't think that's not what this, I think you'd have to then, my only caution with that is for what end? I wouldn't, for example, in this scenario, Thomas Jefferson is not touched in any way. So it's not, we didn't change it, we didn't change the street. Are we gonna change the street just so we can say Thomas Jefferson's impacted? And the hard part about that, it is that capacity and it's maintained its capacity. It's one of the buildings where the enrollment stays pretty consistent. And so if you're gonna go from a 3-section school and make that a 2-section school, you have to pull out you have to have a lot larger impact than we're having in Wilson. So it's just, you know, is it worth shifting? And maybe it is. And you have to look at that. I know Carrie had some questions about Beethoven Street, they're facing Horace Mann. Yeah, they're on the edge of the TJ line. And they're also close to Horace Mann. I can bring that, that's a suggestion you have. I'll show you what the impact of, you know, of that is as well. If I could, before we close out this piece, just to be thinking about, I also included what's the impact on the ethnicity of the buildings. So you can see, are there any major shifts? I think 4% was the largest shift I saw across the board. And were there any shifts in poverty? Were there any shifts in special education population? Like, we don't want to do this, and to your point, Dr. Petta, and have a building that was at 40% poverty and have it shift to 80 or 80% and have it shift to 50. And so I leave you with that piece of data as well. And this was the one chart that Liza was alluding to. What I did was I just took what are the current numbers of sections in the building, and then if this scenario played out tomorrow, right? If this is what we did tomorrow, how many sections of each grade level would we need in each building? Part of the reason for going through this is, again, there's going to be class sizes that are going to be 14 for 1 year, and then class sizes are going to go up to 21, 22 with this scenario, but not 25, not 28, not 30, not 35. Which some of our districts in the area have. So, and again, that's assuming our enrollment does not decline. So with all those assumptions, that does have an impact of needing 8 less faculty in 3 years because of the enacted then. That's roughly $800,000 each consecutive year. It's real money, and that's not counting any shifts in other services that we need to happen. Aides that might be associated with those classroom teachers, or sections of PE, or sections of art and so on. So part of there's a multitude of reasons. We're not doing this just for one single reason, but one of it is to be fiscally responsible. I just wanted to.
Can I have one little thing? I'm sorry if I seem contentious tonight.
No,
I'm not
no,
trying to be. But, you know, is it something that we can check on? Because I know Country Town is also doing vast remodeling, and I think 50 units are going to be dedicated to low and moderate income housing. Is there a way that we can get a projection on what those impacts might be, so that when we look at this, we can start to make maybe more informed decisions on what may happen? Because if you're going to be bringing in low and moderate income families, you're going to have kids in this country.
So the part of this is the fact that Saratoga is doing some renovating. Those families are going to place them there are homeless families.
Okay.
So I think as I don't know this definitively, like I agree with look at every single name and call them and say what are your plans, but that availability will be usurped. I'm certain by the 222 families that are going to our school now, are being educated by us now.
Well, I think
not
we
living
got
at
a
home.
number of the actual units being prepared, because I know that there are several projects around the city. If we got that number versus the existing number, and then looked at people coming into the district, that might be an interesting thing to look at as we're deciding what alternatives there might be.
I can
The
reach
more
out to the,
information we have, the
I
better.
can reach out to the city and they should have those numbers.
I was gonna say, part of why I wanted to have the conversation about homelessness though, too, is to make sure that, or to see if there's anything we can do to make sure some of our families get placed in those places. I don't think there's any guarantee, just because they say they're low income, that it'll be our students. Definitely, there are so many people right now fighting for survival and housing that, you know, if there's any way we can make a difference or have an impact or work with whoever to make sure, like, whether it's a percentage or these families that were displaced because of remodeling or whatever could get back in. I don't know if those things are in place or not, but I think I guess I feel like it's not gonna magically happen, that maybe there's things we could or maybe should do, and I know that's a conversation for next time, but it does, you know, have to do with this too.
I would definitely be, I'd be supportive of seeing a scenario too that keeps everything in the scenario one, but restores the students that we move to Man and brings them to Wilson, just to see if we keep that first floor intact. And then maybe like a scenario 3 that kind of splits the difference, because, you know, I feel like I need a comparison point. And maybe you run the numbers and they don't work, and then you know, because it's just impossible to make that leap without seeing it. But yeah, I feel like, you know, and we're early enough in the process to where, like, we could take another look, you know, come back in September and see, oh, it would have been nice to keep the first ward all together, but it caused you a problem. It's like almost like rewriting a document. You make a change somewhere and something doesn't make sense now. You've got to like fill it in, or maybe it was better leaving it as it was. And so that's how I look at it, is that, you know, it's additional work, but maybe it gives you a solution, or maybe it just wasn't the right touch, and then you just know.
But at least it gives our parents the fact that we tried hard.
Yeah.
You know, we did the best we could, and we took that into consideration when we were making these decisions. That's going to mean something. It really will. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I was curious, and I thought this might be helpful, and this will asked the question, and I'm like, wow, that's not really that helpful. I was looking to see where our homes are that turn over, that have people coming, you know, renting for. We used to have a fairly high 3-month turnaround on our homes. Horace Mann stability was 30%. Only 30% of the class would be the same from September to June. 70% of the students would be different. It's not that bad now, it's about 60%, a little bit more stable. We have a high mobility rate in the district. And so, again, when you think about it's impacting these families, are they even going to be living there, right? 3 years from now, or are they going to be? So I took a 3-year look back. I did a run of all the students who unenrolled from school. Where were they living when they left as a kindergarten, first, whatever grade? And those dots demonstrate where they live. The darker the dot, the more kids lived in that house. In other words, they came in for a year, they left, another family came in, they left, another family came in. So there's no pattern. I was thinking, oh, maybe it's going to have 3 large dots, you know, and
Yeah.
maybe that helps inform that's some, rental properties that are problematic, and, can we work to help stabilize that, and we know we're not impacting families, we're not impacting those families that live there generation after generation after generation. Like my kids went to, Horace Mann. I want to be sure that I went to Horace Mann. I want my kids to go to Horace Mann, and now you're changing my school zone, right? But I don't think it's any insight at all. But I just wanted to let you know that I went through that scenario just to show you it is pretty much all over the place. Not so much on the south side, down the bottom, but pretty much all of this.
Could you point out the MacArthur zone there on that? You say it's in the bottom, yeah.
Here's UHS.
Oh, I see,
So
okay.
it's right up here.
So MacArthur, yeah, right there, yeah, there's not a lot of movement here.
Not a lot here.
Right. Thank you.
And I asked that question, what scenarios would you like to consider? So I've heard Mary Ann and Steve, you'd like me to do this without moving the Wilson students, the 98 students out of Wilson to Horace Mann.
I'm looking at it geographically from Lydia Street to Clinton. If those students remain part of, I don't have any problem with it, like I said, the periphery. So that makes sense. But those people, that's the core. That is
I just want to make sure I understand what you're talking about. So on this map, if you say the peripheral, so you're suggesting these kids go to Horace Mann?
the NOMA, I'm looking at it from my knowledge of the geography of the district. Ely Park, places like Front Street, those kinds of areas. NOMA, north of Maine, we call it, north of Maine. Those things are on the periphery of what was considered
Right here?
Right there.
the traditional
So
ward.
do more like this?
Right there.
But what I'm saying is leave the core intact and then look at the periphery. It may not be 96 students, it may be less than that. How many students live in that Lydia Street to Clinton Street corridor?
I need to sit down with you and do the map and tell me the streets, but that's what they're living
It's the
in.
bottom of this first page. It's like Oak Street, Front Street, Clinton Street. And I think you're talking about 29 kids, but geographically, you're keeping Meadow, there's nobody on Meadow, but Phelps St. Cyril's, those, and Everett, that's the core, and we're talking about maybe 22 kids.
Okay, so Mary, if you could for me, before you go take an action one of these, just like mark off those streets that you're talking about, then I can look at the map and see if I
Yeah.
can.
Because, then you could say we kept the neighborhood school intact and we adjusted like everyone else is readjusting. And that's gonna be, I think, more palatable, that's more palatable to a lot of the
So
parents.
it's trying, okay.
I'll adjust my ask so it's the same as that, because I feel like I was willing to take a look at it, but moving everyone that we had pulled from the ward and sent to Mann and bring them back where they were is probably too big of a change. Is the reason we asked for the report to begin with. I felt like an intermediate step, which is sounding a lot like what you're talking about. Like that's where I feel like I want to see that. Not a more extreme.
On the streets.
I'll definitely do that. I
Just do
appreciate
that, absolutely make the
Yeah,
shift. I would,
and then if we get the projections possibly from the city of what they're expecting with their new projects, I think that's gonna give us a much more holistic picture of what's going on. I appreciate that, thank you.
are there any other suggestions? Any other data points that you'd like me to try to find or thoughts?
Hold on, maybe we had this at one point. Hold on, I gotta find the right question. I think we had said the city of Binghamton has information, or we were gonna ask if the city of Binghamton had information where families are moving to, which I guess is maybe some, I've written that down, but I don't know what we had talked about or what we said. Okay.
The city has that data point.
Okay.
I mean, I know, I can look at from enrollment and unenrollment.
Well, I think it's also like that other map, it's
Yeah.
gonna be everywhere, so it's not gonna matter. Okay, that was the only thing I
I
thought.
think I think the rentals are all expansive across the city.
And then when you're running this other, including the streets that, or excluding the streets that Mary Ann's talking about, can you give us a map that has color on it or
Yes.
shows that? Okay.
Yep, I will do it so that it'll, well.
Sorry, I don't mean to make more work.
No, I was
visually,
planning
feel
on,
like
I was
need to
planning
see
on
it.
doing this one again, so you can see, oh, that's what it looks like. But I gotta figure, like, that I can do easily, but I can take one and like literally draw the line and like color it in. Yeah. Thank you, yeah. Good, thank you. Awesome.
Moving on to special reports, the next item on the agenda will keep it with the superintendent for a presentation and discussion of the district comprehensive improvement plan.
Okay. As shared, typically Dr. Dove would be doing this presentation. Unfortunately, she's out of town. So I'm more than happy to be sharing this information. So we continue to adopt our district mission to provide a safe and engaging environment. We're also taking each and every student to feel a sense of belief, belonging, and becoming successful, and through our continued vision and our core values. But we also understand that what we really need to, we also need to focus on a really strong foundation. And so I'm going to share some data from elementary all the way up to high school that's associated with our district's comprehensive plan. We established 4 commitments. We call them commitments because New York State Education Department has engaged us in an improvement process where they call them commitments. And so to keep the language similar, they essentially are our goals that we track. So there are 4: academic and instructional excellence, supportive environment, where we really are looking at supporting students' attendance, social and emotional well-being, the student experience, how can we provide extraordinary, and we do this top-notch, extracurriculars from athletics to arts to clubs to community engagement, and then of course a place where they feel safe, both physically and emotionally. So last year at this time, we shared our goals around this, these commitments, and so these are last year's goals. Now, just so a kind of refresher, we set in small city school districts where you have many demographics and fairly almost equal distribution of those demographics. The research shows that when you want to look at improvement, it's in increments. When you look at a population that may be a building of 85% poverty, for as one example, 22% special education, that if you were to set a goal to go from 30 to 100% in 1 year, that's really lofty and probably very unrealistic. And add the transientness we just talked about. So for years and years and years, we set goals that would say we're going to move the needle 2 to 3%, and we would often reach those goals. In talking with Jennifer and with our Title I Parent Engagement Committee, we really want to demonstrate that we are committed to closing the gap and getting to that 100% reading and grade level, whatever the goal may be, over a 5-year period of time. In order to do that, we're going to do 20% gap closing measures. 20% of 5 is 100. So that's when we came up with that. And not just we came up with that, it's an approach that several districts use. So what a gap closing measure means is you take where they are at. Okay, so let's say that the performance level was at, the example I have there is 70%. And you want to take that gap to 130 and close it by 20%. So you multiply the 30 by 0.2 or 20%, and you get 6. So the goal becomes, we're going to go from 70 to 76. That's where that number comes from. And so that becomes a little more realistic. It's a little bit far-reaching in terms of what I just mentioned in terms of small cities. So what this is showing you are the end of the year for 2023-24. We did a 20% gap closing measure to set our goals for this year, and that's what the actual goals are. The tool that was used to measure this is our Fontes and Pinnell reading on grade level. It does not take into account a writing component. It is reading on grade level, and every teacher does it. So the 130 elementary teachers we do is implementing and utilizing this tool. And so I add that because it's not a standard, it's standardized in the sense that here's what you're supposed to ask and have kids read, but it's not standardized in terms of here's a computer asking a question or a multiple choice question that you're filling out. So there's some human impact in terms of identifying the reading and grade levels. There's a little bit more margin here. But overall, you can see that some of our grade levels made huge gains. Second grade, over a 10% gain in reading on grade level. What I was thrilled by is when I look at these actual reading on grade levels, the State Education Department just released their 2025 test results, and we have some of our buildings, and I don't know if they've released them to the public yet. They've released them to the schools, so I'm a little hesitant to be more specific than others than to say that some of our buildings' ELA scores improved 25% in terms of levels of proficiency, which was outstanding, just outstanding.
Could we get that information like next month or the month after or whatever?
Yeah, as soon as they can release it all, I have it all done on a chart. You'll be able to see the performance increases. Many of them are double-digit increases, which is fantastic. And 2 of our buildings outperformed the state by 10%. Right? So again, making huge gains. I will say that the building leadership and the teachers' commitment to professional learning teams and working together, both as side by side as elementary teachers or 6th and 7th, 8th grade ELA teachers, along with a reading specialist, has made the difference. It's really sharing their practice and trying to figure out what we can do to support students. Again, these are in buildings, right, of 60%, 70%, 80% poverty. So the state's
is there or in some of the ones that grew faster, like, is there science of reading kind of stuff going on, or is the district, I know the governor had said, like, schools need to have some amount of science of reading, and that wasn't the program before. Is there some of that going on or not?
We've always had a science of reading in place and writing. We have had shared reading in place, independent reading, phonics programs. We've always had a strong, this is nothing, that's nothing new for us.
Okay.
Really the difference has been looking at common formative assessments and asking ourselves, why aren't students performing well in these particular areas, and what do they need? You know, is it more Haggerty, is it more letter awareness, is it more letter sounds?
For grades that are a little flat, like K3, like has there been digging into like what those kids need or how to increase that?
Yeah, they absolutely will and are. They do that at the end of the year when they're looking at their end of the year, when they look at this end of the year data. This is where I wish Jennifer was here because she's in those conversations to say that sometimes it's a combination of grade level. You have some of our veteran teachers of 20, 30 years, and their grade levels are like, and they have one new teacher, and wow, they continue the momentum. We have spaces in our district where there's 3 brand new teachers. And so that may take them a little bit longer to get the groove and benefit from those collective conversations. But they all have access to resources. As I mentioned in the past, we've also had coaching going on. We have new teachers who have just recently retired, who are representative from the state, are going to come back and coach our teachers where those gaps are continuing to exist. Sometimes you look at a grade level and they happen to be a grade level of special needs students. This is all students. This is E&L students. This is special ed students. So with a district at 20%, 21% special ed, if you have a grade level where you have more than not, it can impact your grade level data. So I don't have that data off the top of my head.
Thank you.
And then also attendance. Kindergarten's our worst attendance. Then next to 5th grade. It does impact, sure. And then we come to math. And so As I mentioned before, our gap closing is trying to move closer. State level proficiency on the math assessment is 53%. And so you want to see these scores at least up at that 53%. They have improved. We're not always in the 30s, which is good news. However, they did not make the mark in most cases. Actually, I think in all cases. Should be great. Yes. Our Algebra 1 Regents does include our 8th graders who took the Regents, the 20 proficiency. But that number is probably one of the more concerning numbers because of the stagnant-ness. I mentioned this before, math is not unique to Binghamton. There are many school districts that struggle with mathematics. But one of the analysis that I'm going to be doing is comparing Binghamton as a small school with other small schools, with that data we have access to. Is there data looking like this? Now, this is our internal measure of iReady. This is not the state assessment. So when you see our state assessments, we have buildings performing like 65 proficient on the state assessments for grades 3, 4, and 5. So it's much higher than the 20s and the 42s. But the disparity is what my concern is in the district. Why in these two buildings is the scores so much higher than some of our other buildings? Our highest concentration of poverty, our numbers are looking like that on the state test. They're not looking like the 60%. Those are the questions we need to ask. And then we have goals for supportive environment. So the goals for supportive environment are based on two populations of our students, subpopulations, who have unfortunately struggled with school attendance, and that has been our Hispanic population and our Black population. But to put it in a context, I put all of our subgroups for which we're held accountable for. And so the goal last year, the goal last year was to decrease chronic absenteeism by 10%. You want these numbers to be low. You want chronic absenteeism to be 0. You want students to be coming every day. You don't want them to have missed 18 days or more. And so if you look across New York State, in 23-24, I looked up their numbers. We are about 3 or 4% higher than the state. So it's almost a lot. It's a line like the highest one here in terms of Hispanic population. Across the state, the Hispanic population is missing the most out of school. So I know that our commissioner's very concerned about this because it kind of screams value. But also embedded in this is our transient population. Any student who was with us for 10 days or more has to be counted. And so those students who come for us for a month or two and are not in full attendance because perhaps they are homeless, perhaps they are, living with somebody and they're not, the living accommodations are not where it needs to be yet, so they're missing days of school, and then they go back and live with another family member, they count. So it's tearing apart this data, and that's what our attendance task force job is to look at this data and identify where some of the biggest barriers are and then to address it. But our actuals went up significantly. They go up 10%, but so the goal is to decrease 10%, and it goes up 10%. Something is wrong, in my opinion. And so we have a attendance flow chart. Teachers are supposed to make the first phone calls. I'm really thrilled to report that by mid-fall, all of our buildings will have new phone systems which will enable teachers to make phone calls from their room out, and parents, when they call back in, the voicemail will go automatically to an email so that they can retrieve messages easily and make calls back. So Roosevelt won't be done, and TJ, the other buildings will be done. Daily attendance for increasing. Again, our chronic absenteeism rate was there, so our daily white population increased by 1%. The others really remain flat. Or in case of Hispanic went down. Student experience, I talk about those extracurriculars, and so we really focus this on the academics, meaning doing something else different for the student experience. So CTE at the high school, comes in the form of business management as well as culinary arts and accounting. You can get a CTE in that. So I know that Mary Dearpan worked really hard in making those opportunities very transparent to students, and we saw some increase in there. We still don't seem to be able to make gains by getting our students in 11th grade to go to BOCES, for plumbing or electric and so on. So we have to kind of explore that a little bit. And our P-Tech and Project Lead the Way numbers are also down. I think what happened in this case is some of those students that normally would have gone that path with a different CTE measure. Our Southern School of Fine Arts continues to grow. Didn't hit our goal, but it did grow this past year. And so we'll continue to support that. And then goals for safety. So for staff safety, we asked a staff survey question, and I will be sending in the next future board run a compilation of the district's climate survey and analysis. I'm just finishing that up, so you'll see across the district. Across the district, one of the questions we asked is, I feel safe at school, and the population of students that feel the safest at school are our teachers across the district and our elementary students, which is pretty awesome. Our secondary students are not feeling like that, and so we have to ask the question why. Now, is that a school environment? Is that a concern about what somebody else is doing today? Because I don't know what they're doing today, because no one's texting what they're doing today. I can't get to my phone. We took them away last year. Does that have an impact? It'll be interesting to see the results on this.
Were the middle schools different than the high school, or was it all kind of along the same line?
I think they're very similar.
Similar.
I think the numbers off the top of my head, but I think they were very similar. Yeah. One of the things we did with the survey, and you'll see this when you get the results, is we aligned about 27 questions total. We aligned each 3 sections of the questions, and one section is aligned to belief, another couple questions about sense of belonging, and another sections of questions around becoming, so that we can start to see trends around those 3, and it's also going to help measure our mission. So moving forward, in terms of academic and instructional excellence, we're going to continue to implement and monitor professional learning communities. Those PLTs, or professional learning teams, is really, really important to us. Each year, as we get stronger, as buildings get stronger in that, you see the results. It's truly incredible. I want to give a shout out to East Middle School, for example. Their 6th grade ELA team all year long, just really committed to the process, and they knocked the same test out of the ballpark for those kids and so on. So those kinds of things, that's where I can point to that evidence in looking at this. The other thing that we're doing is implementing the district essential standards, but also we're calling them checkpoint assessments. Okay, with our common formative assessments that to help provide clarity with teachers is the checkpoint assessment. So that's something common that everyone's given, so that we can have an understanding of the building principal and the teachers where they are within the system and moving forward. Nothing new. It's a practice of assessments, that formative assessments we've been doing for a long time. The standards continue that work. And I think the largest piece of those strategies that can have an impact is when we articulate tier 2 and tier 3 expectations and resources. So what that means is that when I have a student struggling, what else can I do as a classroom teacher? But then when they continue to struggle and they need something else, what are those resources that I can point to? This is that reading interventionist, this is a special education teacher that they need more time on task. Do they need some form of tutoring or explaining in a different way than I'm doing typically in the classroom? So next year, at the end of the year, we've set new goals, and those proficiencies again are based on the results of this year in a 20% gap closing measure. Again, looking at constant reading, I-ready assessment, looking at some course pass rates, because we want to correlate the passing rates along with the performances on those assessments, and for both middle school and high school. Supportive environment. We are going to move to higher daily attendance rates. 89.2 is going to be the lowest, and try to increase from there. The state has changed after many, many years of arguing with them, that really holding us accountable for things they have no control over, or little control over, as districts with chronic absenteeism, when we measure it like 10 days and we count. It's really not fair to hold a school district accountable when someone moves in and then on their own accord leave because they need to. And we're kind of, so they removed chronic absenteeism from the accountability system and replaced it with daily average attendance. The gold standard for daily average attendance has always been 95%. Right. The state was back when I was in the classroom. And then, student experience, again, wanting to really, elevate this by saying, looking at the believe and the become portion of the survey and saying we really want all kids to get at least a 78% or higher with all those. And we're looking at, the Regents diploma. Now, we're going to look at the Regents diploma for next year because that's our reality. In 3 years, it's probably not going to be the reality because the incoming ninth graders are the ones who are going to have the opportunity to graduate without the current diploma. So we'll continue to look at that. But really wanting to push it to say, okay, they're getting the diploma, but how many are really taking those extra courses to get a distinction? Is has a variety, and I'll just share this before of understanding. It's in the course catalog, but you can get a certain percent on a single Regents, and it's with this, you get a diploma with distinction.
Right.
There's a variety of different ways to get that. And then safety. We want, again, on the entire belonging, not just pulling out one question, but looking at all the questions asked on the survey. When you get the results, you'll be able to see those questions that were currently asked. How are we going to do that? We're going to continue to use culturally and linguistically responsive practices and restorative practices, using respect agreements, circles, trying to focus more next year on circles as instructional tools, not just as connectors for getting to know each other. We also have, we're going to be using Navigate 360 for one more year, to a certain extent, but also some other tools for external warning systems for the safety of their building. You're going to be hearing more about that. We have blue lights being installed for high school so that if we have a lockdown in the middle of lunch, students are going to be trained to know that don't go into the building because there's an event happening there. Those kind of things. And the swag are the, I always say this wrong, I want to say school-wide activity groups, but it's staff wellness activity groups. They're all school-wide. The staff wellness. We have a lot of positive feedback for June Health and Wellness Day. Activities was a huge undertaking on Dawn's part, but staff are all over the place doing a lot of great things for themselves.
Before you shift that, I just want to, I serve on the safety committee, but I want to, because he's here tonight, he's going to blush. He's sitting across from me. Eric Wilson does an outstanding job. I've been doing school safety now for 50 years. I've been around a lot of people, police, first responders, issues we've had at the high school, all that kind of stuff. Eric has done an outstanding job in orchestrating our safety committee, setting up our agendas. It's something to look forward to when we go. Let me just give you an example. We were the only district. I think last year we had a session on ransomware attack. Like, he planned a session. I said, Eric, what do we do? He brought BOCES and no other district did this. What if our entire computer system went down in the district? How would we communicate? Ransomware, malware attack, and that was a tabletop exercise we did. I just want to give you an example. So every time we meet, he has a great agenda. We're heading above. You can't do enough for school safety. And nothing is more important than the safety and well-being. He does an outstanding job. I want to compliment him tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Well, I have to defer to BOCES on that particular issue. They carry the water on this.
Really good. But you're always thinking way ahead of everybody else.
So we're awaiting our accountability status. That takes quite a while, and then we'll usually find out in November or December. I can tell you from looking at the preliminary results that Thomas Jefferson First been strong trimming in good status, and Wilson had some really good progress in whether I think they're going to stay there. The East Middle School also made some really great ground, so I'm hoping that we move yet another building further down into the pile towards locally supported getting there. And that's it. Again, the district improvement with all the details will be posted on the website. It is a work in progress, so as are the school improvement plans. Maybe from the state knows that while they would do July 1, I think this year, that they're fluid. They will give us feedback.
Thank you. Move on now to a presentation on the district safety plan. Turn it over to Eric Wilson.
Oh, it's already, that's probably what. Okay. So every year we review the district-wide safety plan, and it starts with the district safety team, which is comprised of school board members, teachers, administrators, parents, school safety personnel, and support staff. There's also police and fire personnel from the city on it. And in the spring, we give out a copy of the district safety plan so that they can review it and make whatever changes may occur, and operationalize some changes too that administrators see as being necessary. There's also, from time to time, like pretty much every year, some legislative change, right? Some, they want to increase what's contained in the district safety plan. So we reviewed and revised as needed annually. We have to have what we're doing tonight as a public hearing, giving the public an opportunity. The safety plan is posted on the website and submitted to the state education department within 30 days of adoption, which we do every year. Right. So these are the things that the plan has to have in it. It has to have policies and procedures for responding to acts of violence, whether that's students, staff, visitors, and we have all of that. Responding to implied or direct threats of violence by students, staff, contacting appropriate law enforcement, coordinating the designation of incident command protocols, communication and use of district resources and personnel during emergencies, ensuring compliance with building emergency response plans and all mandated drill requirements. We've identified strategies for improving communication among students, between students and staff, and reporting potentially violent incidents such as peer mediation, conflict resolution, and establishing anonymous reporting mechanisms for school violence. We have our button on the website. Responding to emergencies, including protocols for responding to bomb threats, hostage-taking situations, intrusions, and kidnapping. We do things too, like we have the regional SWAT team, when school's not in session, does a walkthrough of the high school and middle schools, just so that they are familiar with the building in case of an emergency. We don't do that when students are present or even when necessarily adults are present other than administrators. But it does, and they give us feedback on what they would want to see in an emergency response situation. The plan content, prevention and intervention, program strategies the district uses, designation of district chief emergency officer, which is me, included description of the duties of hall monitors and other school safety personnel, inclusion of workshop or workplace violence prevention training. That was new last year, and that's something we've been doing annually. And new this year is a classroom temperature mitigation plan. So when the classroom temperature reaches a certain degree, we have a plan in terms of both measuring that and mitigating it, and ultimately relocating people out of a classroom if we can't get the temperature to a reasonable level. These are the mandated drill requirements. They have not changed since last year. So they are the same. 8 evacuation drills, 4 lockdown drills each year, 8 of the required drills must be completed by December 31st. Drills will be conducted at different times of the school day. Students shall be instructed in the procedures to be followed in the event that a fire occurs during a lunch period or assembly, and at least one early dismissal drill that is no more than 15 minutes before the normal dismissal. And we do announce the drills no more than 7 days before they happen, so the parents know if there's going to be a lockdown drill or a fire drill.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to jump in and share something only because you had mentioned the lockdown drills, and this was something that is new for today. There was no opportunity earlier to share it. NISBA had their resolution committee meet today, and everybody will remember we had sent in the resolution about the lockdown drills and recommending that they go from 4 to 2. So I got a phone call that was during the meeting, and they asked if we would be agreeable to the language changing, because the committee was imminently voting on this thing. And they said the committee would approve it if we took out the part where it said real lockdowns were counted against the amount of drills. And so I said, okay, well, that's not exactly what we wanted, but if it's getting something versus nothing, and so I said, just kind of made the executive decision there to say, okay, we'll go ahead, and presumably they went and voted, and it was a yes. So just because you had brought that up, I felt that was a good time to bring that in.
So these are some of the new initiatives we have. Dr. Thompson mentioned earlier, whether we call it blue light or amber light, there's a notification system that's visual outside of the high school. I'm not certain as to when it's going to be completed.
The electricity's all been run, and I believe it's actually supposed to be installed before September 1.
Okay. So that will indicate to people on the exterior, and that's a help for kids that may be outside the building. Parents who are coming to the building, bringing kids maybe from an appointment or something. We have staff that, travels between buildings. It'll be a notification for them as well. That's really a major improvement in that particular building. We also have the voice over internet phones are being installed district-wide and implemented throughout the next several weeks through the school buildings. And we are just getting to understand what that software can do for us in terms of communication within the building, both through the phone system, through email, and we're going to see some improvements in school safety as a result of that. We have continued upgrades and replacements to our camera system. One of the things that is almost a little ironic is our oldest cameras now are at MacArthur. Yes. So we actually have to come up with, and the technology is significantly different. Because if you think about when the building was designed, to the time it was, built to now, a lot has happened in terms of the technology around camera systems. And what we're installing now is really significantly better. So we are looking to replace older cameras at places like the high school and MacArthur as well. Our radio infrastructure, we have repeaters. We have a radio system throughout the city, so that all of our buildings can communicate. I have a radio, a walkie-talkie in my office that allows me to communicate with each building. I can hear what each building is communicating, and it's a repeater system, the infrastructure. And that was very old. We replaced that this year. I think there are 3 separate units on different buildings throughout the district. And we've either reconditioned or replaced all of the radios over the last couple of years. But, that's something that we continue to do. And that level of communication is huge during an emergency event. So these are the dates for this year's committee meetings. We'll have 6, I believe. Yeah, and a couple of things we have to do this year. One of the legislative changes is the safety plan will actually come back before January 1st because we have to add a cardiac emergency response plan. And in order to do that, that October meeting, I really want to get our emergency response folks from the fire department involved in that discussion and what that looks like. We are training, we're offering AED and CPR training for administrators, school safety all have it. We are kind of upping our game in terms of the ability to respond to cardiac events if they occur in the schools, during sporting events, and we'll probably be buying some new AEDs as well, just to augment our footprint in some of the buildings.
Are those machines in every building, or those?
They are in every building,
Okay.
but the question is, are there enough in every
Okay.
building? And then that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to continue with student supports, which is really, it's that preventative measure in terms of making sure that our schools are safe. Capital improvements to building safety systems are going to continue to be looked at. And we are going to continue with tabletop exercises for various scenarios. That is the changes to the district safety plan this year, kind of a summary of what we've done and the direction in which we're going.
Any comments or questions from the group?
I do like the fact that he's given us, or he's given the safety committee the times for the meetings, because every committee did that, and it was very helpful. That's a good idea.
Okay, we'll keep it with you for the code of conduct presentation. This is the way here for public hearing.
Public hearing?
Yes, there is.
Yes.
Yes,
Between that,
Between.
right now.
Right.
And we have no one in the room.
David, do you have anything to say?
No questions?
No, we can go ahead and move on, that's fine.
All right, so the code of conduct, again, just like the district safety plan, every year we take a look at the code of conduct, and by we I mean the, oh my gosh, yes, the Andrew Task Force. So what we do is we solicit suggestions for changes to the code of conduct from district administrators, people who are administering it on a daily basis. And we take those, we discuss those, sometimes we incorporate them, sometimes we explain why there doesn't need to be a change and why, the existing code is enough. So you'll see some of those. The emphasis we put on it is character and support, and the importance of implementing strategies and supports interventions and plans that address student needs before the behavior rise to a level of a serious nature. So we really look at, instead of consequences, instead of punishments, we look at student discipline as an opportunity to teach kids appropriate behavior, create expectations, and intervene before the behaviors get to a level where the consequences become serious. So we try to pair consequences with meaningful instruction and guidance, corrective feedback, and reteaching, and offer students an opportunity to learn from their mistakes. We ensure school-wide spaces, classrooms, sports, recreation areas are civil, safe, and secure. It's important that all of our kids feel safe. And, we're seeing the data that some of them don't. And so that's one of the priorities of the Behavior Task Force and the Code of Conduct is to inspire that sense of safety. Maximize every school's capacity to model, teach, and promote positive behaviors using interventions and strategies associated with PBIS. There's going to be an added emphasis on that this year at the high school. And we're hoping to see, some behavior improvements as a result. Promote equity and support our principals and efforts to be trauma sensitive and culturally responsive to our kids. So we really want to make sure that when we're meeting our kids where they are with discipline, and the focus not being punitive, but creating desired behaviors and getting kids to understand why certain behaviors are desired over others.
Can I just ask, I'm sorry?
Sure.
Is there anything in the survey that measures in some way, like if kids feel respected, culturally or not just safe, but I don't know how you would measure, or like the trauma part of it, but like, I don't know. Or even if they feel like they're being treated equally, equitably, whatever, especially kids that are falling under code of conduct violations.
Yes, there's a question, there are one or two questions on how the belonging that speak to, they feel like I'm treated, how they're treated. You know, the word respect, but
Okay. And are parents notified every time something happened? Like there was a part about reteaching or teaching the skills. Are parents notified anytime a kid violates something or breaks a
it's
rule?
our expectation. So there's 3 tiers to responding to a behavior. Tier 1 is called a classroom incident report. It's a report for documenting when a teacher sees a behavior that they feel needs to be addressed and they intervene. There's a continuum of that. If someone is talking a lot in class, and, the teacher wants to draw their attention to that distracting, but they don't listen to them, they might put that in their classroom history report. I don't know if they would that day call home because they talked to the child about something like that. It might be something that culminates in a connection to also not doing well in class, right? And do it there, all the way to there's an incident that occurred between 2 students. That would be a phone call. If it's a level 2 or 3, that's a discipline referral. Again, depending on that level, that's what the ones that go to administrators, the degree to which it denote.
So some updates to the code of conduct for this year. We are adding the internet-enabled device policy into the code of conduct this year. And at the October policy committee meeting, we'll be incorporating it by reference into our acceptable use policy for students. The policy is consistent with exactly what we did with the middle school and high school last year. But because of the law, we have to implement this at the elementaries. In discussions with the elementary principals, the students who tend to have phones are some 4th graders, primarily 5th graders. Not all of them have phones, so the use of the Yonder bags really isn't as necessary. It's not going to be as helpful at the elementary school. So each elementary school is going to come up with a procedure where students turn in their devices at the start of the school day, because it is a bell-to-bell policy, and the device will be placed in a secure location by administration and returned to the student at the end of the day. And this is compliant with the changes that have been made in New York State Education Law, Section 2803. These are some changes that were made by, suggestions that were made by administrators, because when they are implementing certain violations, they want some more flexibility in areas. So we're adding a level 2 violation. Currently, there's only a level 3 violation for weapons, firearms, and explosives. Not because we want to, give a level 2 violation to a kid who brings a gun to school, but there are circumstances in which we've had kids bring knives to school, either accidentally or intentionally, where it doesn't really rise to the level of a level 3 violation. It's also, we're changing the language from bomb threats to making threats by providing false information about current or future presence of explosive materials or weapons on the school property or use of such items. I'm going to shoot up the school. You know, things like that. We just needed a broader catch-all for that particular violation. And we're changing false activation of fire alarm to false activation of emergency alarm because we're going to have some new alarm capabilities with our voice over internet, as well as, you know, even the amber or blue light system. So we don't want that to be relegated simply to fire alarm. We must have quick reference or summaries of the code of conduct. We publish those. Those are on the website, as well as the full code of conduct. Do you have any questions about our changes this year or the code of conduct in general?
PBI.
Yes.
PBI. And tell me what that means.
Oh. What is the actual acronym?
I'm making a dictionary.
So it is a system of teaching positive behaviors to students and using language, consistent language in the buildings to create an atmosphere of respect.
I just want to mention something here, because and you know this, just to share this with you. It's recommended in any district that you not only have the physical safety supports, you know, we have a metal detector, you have people in place, you have cameras, you have secure doors, but that you have what we call psychological safety supports. That's very important. And after Columbine, that phrase came out. It's not something I invented. A gentleman in Corning, right after Columbine, April of '99, he said, make sure your school has plenty of psychological safety supports. And that's what does that mean? It means if a kid needs to go someplace to talk to somebody, is there a place in every school building where a student feels safe to go talk and maybe just decompress? They're having a stressful day, they're having an issue they need to deal with, and they need to talk to somebody. And I'm sure in every building we have not just counselors, psychologists, but and then we call it psychological safety support, in addition to all of the other things that are talked about. And we do have that at Binghamton. So, thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, we have nobody present, so we will not have a public hearing and we'll move to the next item on the agenda, and that being a discussion of future board meeting agendas. We'll turn it back to the superintendent for this part of the meeting.
Great. I'm going to pass this around as I do in each August. I send out or share with the board a list of topics that are either required by regulation for the board to engage in, and some of the things that are via policy. Our policy dictates when different budget presentations are to be presented, and then if there are anything that I know that's happening that's timely. So, for example, we're continuing the conversation on elementary attendance zones. I put that on again in September. I put that on again in October, not knowing when that was going to end. But then you'll see in November the addition of update on the Roosevelt project. I'd like for architects to come and share with the board. You can ask any questions. How is the progress going? What are some barriers? What's the timeline? Just we haven't given an update in a year. And then December, I'd like to bring to the board a very public session, a discussion on the relocation of the Roosevelt families and students. Optimistically, if we're able to make a determination around elementary attendance zones prior to then. The other reason for making it December is that in January, if faculty wish to transfer it to a different building, it would be helpful if the teachers at Roosevelt knew where they were going the following year. If they were displeased with that in any way, they would have an opportunity to
buy-in for a different position in the district. Other than that, I try to keep it to our task force that are working on attendance and mathematics, as well as a policy update, because that's important that the board understands the policy that are being looked at and in the upcoming year. I'm aware that, one other one in April, the shared decision-making plan, I was thinking we just did that, so that may be able to come off. But if there are, I'm aware that the board is going to be looking at the board agendas and making some determination if we want to make any adjustments. So I kept it, to seemingly a minimal, even though there are several topics on in each month. Out of respect for, the understanding that we may want to have some ongoing discussion topics. And so one of those I did not put down here, but wanted to raise to the board is, do we want to put in place on an agenda in the future a discussion on homelessness? I've sent a white paper to the board, as well as a one-page data sheet for the board members to look over, but looking for consensus to see if that's something you'd like added. And you have the data, it would just be a matter of adding it as an agenda item for discussion.
I would be in support of that, and I think probably everybody else would too.
Would you like that in any particular month? In September, Dawn will be providing an update on personnel, just the numbers of hires, what does the school year look like as we start off, and then we also have a place on their NISA resolutions. Are there any, last time here at this time, we had conversations about some suggestions to be thinking about resolutions for change, and if there aren't any, we can not have the discussion, but wanted to make sure it wasn't neglectful and not putting that on there.
I would be supportive of this on the September agenda, because I know everybody's very, very interested in this, and I don't think we wanted to wait too long into the school year. And September with the NISBA resolutions, we'd be looking at, I think very simply, how do you want me to vote, your preferences when we have that meeting on Zoom in October. And I know last year in September we got into talking about the lockdown resolution, and we can talk about resolutions in the future, though it's a pretty long wait between that September date and then I think July is when the resolution kit goes out. It's a very long time, but last time around the resolution discussion wasn't very long. Everybody, I think, was fine with me voting according to the recommendations. But yeah, how does everybody else feel about September?
Steve, something on September says their introduction to student government officers. Do you want to comment? Steve and I went to this conference in August 1st and 2nd, and there was the session on the student ex officio officers was excellent. They had a 3-hour session where they had the Baldwinsville School District and Schenectady, and they had their student representatives there, and they went through, from soup to nuts. What should that student be doing? How are they selected? Do you want to jump in, Steve? Because you sat in on that too. It was an excellent session.
Yeah, I think you covered probably about 95% of it, but it was great to hear from the student perspective what they found interesting and valuable about it and what they felt they contributed, and then also to get that feedback from, in some cases it was a superintendent or a board president or vice president also up there at the panel table with them. And so I think that it was helpful for us to kind of go through a little bit of ideation about how to get the most value out of the person in that role. And make it a good experience for them. So it's just like, we said last time, they're not going to be here to be a decoration. They want to get something out of it.
I think we'd left that conversation off with agreeing to be part of student council, but a separate position. I've communicated that to the student council leadership. The person was just named a couple months, not even a month ago. And they have co-presidents. They assumed it was going to be the co-presidents, so it was email conversation. So I'll be circling back the first week of school and reaching out to the individuals saying, I'd like you to hold an election, or maybe one of the co-presidents wants to run for that particular position. BOCES is also offering a session, I believe, a training coming up in September. I think we also had discussed that, just like I do agenda meetings with Steve and Carrie, that I told a brief description that there would be an expectation of meeting prior to the meeting, so there would be conversation about these are the things that are being discussed, and so they would be prepared, not just walking in not having a sense of what's going on. But beyond that, if you want to have further, I don't know if it comes with reframing board meetings, right? If that's part of the board's goal, and you're doing some studying on that, does it wait for that in terms of if there's some other role that takes place at a board meeting? In other words, do you like to have updates from the superintendent? Let's have an update every month from the student, and you wanted to add it. We've already adopted a resolution. We also have a board policy on what our agendas look like. You just have to go through the process of making those adjustments. Do you want to wait till you've done that study to make that adjustment?
I have provided notes on that in a conference we attended, so you'll see in the notes. One of the things we found interesting was, I think it was a Schenectady district, they even had training in protecting that student from the media. In other words, if you have a media board meeting and then we're done and then all of a sudden the student is out there, what should the student do? What should they be saying to the media? Right, Steve, they talked about, there was pretty interesting stuff. So those notes I provided you have a lot of information that was shared. It was pretty interesting, but as the superintendent said, you're covering most of that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good question as far as, what is it that we want to do with the student, and then also as a board goal of ours to sort of, I don't say revamp the meeting, I think most of it works well, but we've had a lot of steps forward in terms of greater efficiency, so it kind of begs the question of, is it the right touch or is there anything more we need to do? And I think we're very open to looking at that. So, maybe it's two steps. As one is in the intermediary when they come, giving thought to the onboarding of, just getting them up to speed on what we do and where they fit in, and just say, as much as it makes sense in the moment that they're welcome to jump in and participate, and they, kind of buys us a little bit of time to maybe come up with a more structured part of the meeting for them. But, to me, then that early part doesn't even change either, as far as like, if there's something that is being talked about from a student perspective is helpful, they should absolutely feel free to contribute.
And maybe if it's short, or I don't know, just if we're talking about the three goals, like belong, become, whatever. That, I don't know how it would fit, but maybe like in that format, like kind of a status of the class, or like, status of the high school or whatever. What are people talking about, or how are they feeling? Are there things that have happened under those three categories? And it could be really short, and maybe it's not every month, but I feel like the value also of having a student voice is knowing more about what's actually going on in the school. I don't have a lot of 17-year-olds talking to me, or 16, and other people do, but I think it's good to have that perspective.
So in the interim, we could place them on the agenda rather than changing the agenda, right? So in other words, we welcome them in September, but if we wanted to place an agenda item on here for October, that was just an update, and I would work with the person on what that would mean, right? But an update on Binghamton High School clubs or something like that. And really
The way it puts them on the spot less, I think it's hard to be like, we're all having a discussion and you're over there bringing something up. Maybe like the little updates helps them feel more comfortable then to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But also they can plan ahead. I'm not trying to make it, I know they have a lot of stuff to do, so I'm not trying to like add something else harder, but it's probably something they can kind of do off the top of their head or with a tiny bit of planning maybe.
And actually, I think we're going to make the recommendation, they might do it in the November, so they have a feel for the board meetings, but also empower them on the items, like encourage them when they speak about that.
That's a great idea. I'd be careful about asking too much too soon, because I just could not imagine how intimidating it would be to be a 16, 17-year-old and sit at this table with real grown-ups, and you just don't know what's going on. And it's hard enough that you remember your first year on the board, and I do, and it just felt like it took a while to get the hang of the personalities and the issues and the policies and the acronyms, and there's so many. And, Yeah, so I think to kind of ease them in would be best for everyone.
And then is there a, not repeat, but like update, so October says baseline data, math and school attendance, and then is there a time we can circle back and get like updated, whatever?
We have this attendance task force in January coming back, so then that will be.
So that'll have some of that data
They'll have,
also?
they'll have the attendance data for sure for the
Okay.
first half of the year.
And then math?
And then math, you can put it on there. Yeah, I mean, whether it's a presentation or it's a report.
Just even a report or.
That's, yeah, let me look
I
at
feel
the
like just
assessment
we
calendar.
waited so long, you know, sometimes it's like
Yep.
September, October, and then it's August. And so just so there's something in between. And for us, not trying to make more things, but for board retreat kind of topic, should we be at a certain point checking in about where we are with our goals? Because again, it's something we do like August and June or whatever months.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, that I need to develop a calendar or some type of plan to get us through that year. It's like, okay, we've had the workshop last month on board goals and vision, and then we have the one tonight looking at roles and responsibilities, and then we're going to look at revamping the meeting, for lack of a better way to say that. That's not exactly what it is. But then, yes, so like, how are we going to track that during the year? Like, what else is the content going to be? And then, you know, come to the end, and how do you know we hit it? And you know, set up time and structure to get like, you know, the post-test of the board self-evaluations, look at how we feel we did, and have like some real conversation about it, like among the 7 of us. And I like that there is, you have that policy committee update in November, but we don't have, we used to do 2. There would be one toward the start of the year, one at the end. And I felt like the one at the end really was so dry, because say, well, we reviewed like X amount of policies and we changed these, and there wasn't really any big stuff to report on. So it wound up being a very boring presentation. It was much more interesting to look at what are the big issues at the start of the year, and you kind of trust us that we did it, and then, which we did. But it was not the greatest use of time during the meeting. So unless people feel strongly to bring that back, I personally don't. Anything else like we feel we want to add? Or,
Even if the discussions, yeah. Thinking more around the discussion topics, right? And particularly if there are, as you look at the board goals and that second goal around community engagement, if there's something that comes up, like, I think this would be a great discussion for the board to give me input or greater input. And that could be added in the future too.
Okay, great. We will skip past the second of the 2 public comment periods because nobody is here to participate. So that will bring us to the certified C resolutions. Could I have a motion, please, on resolution C1 through C7? Moved by Liza, seconded by Marianne. I'm going to go ahead and read 2025-8-C1, retirement Stephen McGovern. Whereas Stephen McGovern has served the Binghamton City School District faithfully and continuously since December 10th, 2018 as a department chair, and whereas Stephen McGovern has submitted his intention to retire effective at the end of the day, January 1st, 2026, now therefore be it resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Board of Education, does and hereby accepts his request for retirement, and be it further resolved that the Board of Education extends to Stephen McGovern our sincere thanks and the thanks of the community for his efforts on behalf of the students of the district, and be it further resolved that we as the board extend our sincere best wishes for a long, happy, and prosperous retirement. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Callahan?
Yes.
Dr. Penna?
Yes.
Ms. Sanchez?
Yes.
Ms. Turner?
Yeah.
Mr. Seepersod?
Yes. Certified stipend CS resolutions, can I have a resolution, or can I have a motion please on resolutions CS1 through CS8? CS8. Moved by Albert, seconded by Eliza. We have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Callahan?
Yes.
Dr. Penna?
Yes.
Ms. Sanchez? Ms. Turner?
Yeah.
Mr. Seepersod?
Yes. Non-certified NC resolutions, could I have a motion please on resolutions NC 1 through 5? Moved by Eliza, seconded by, I'll go ahead and second. And we have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Callahan?
Yes.
Dr. Penna?
Yes.
Ms. Sanchez? Ms. Turner?
Yeah.
Mr. Seepersod?
Yes. And general G resolutions, could I have a motion please on resolutions G1 through G14? Moved by Albert, seconded by Eliza. Is there anything I need to read here? The donation. And that's it? Okay. Resolution 2025-8-G11, a donation resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. The Board of Education accepts a monetary donation of $500 from Toth Sports, and we extend our sincerest appreciation for this donation to the district. We have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Callahan?
Yes.
Dr. Penna?
Yes.
Ms. Sanchez?
Yes.
Ms. Turner?
Yeah.
Mr. Seepersod?
Yes. Next up, updates from the superintendent.
Okay. I have a couple. First, but I don't want to forget it, and I'm just looking right at him. Dave Hermanovich, who's sitting behind us, who's been with PR for several years, has taken a new job at Binghamton University. So this is his last week working with us, and just wanted to just say thank you for all your hard work with the district and keeping all things social media and website and PR going for us. Really much appreciated. I also wanted to just give a shout out for our basketball summer league, who happened to have beat
Oh, yeah.
Seton last week. Quite exciting, last Monday. But I know that our varsity coach has done a lot this summer working with the city and the league, and just a great outcome. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here, but I think Steve was able to see the win, and I understand it was just a great moment. We have our administrators are back officially yesterday. All administrators, 12 months are obviously here all year long, but our 10 and a half months administrators, our assistant principals, and department chairs returned to work on Monday, and we'll all gather on Friday and Monday for administrative retreat. And this year it's being hosted at Taste of New York. And I just want to express a thank you to Beth Roberts, who, when we reached out there at no cost, are able to rent their beautiful room because of the collaboration, the work we do with Cornell Cooperative Extension. They have a great, if you're set on any other boards or any other community, they have a wonderful room as you walk into Taste of New York to the left. Of course, the gardens in the back will be able to hopefully enjoy as well. So thank you to Sonia for making all that work with that and food and so on. This week kicked off our new teacher orientation, which was fantastic. They were all smiling when I left after speaking with them for 10 minutes, so I think that means they're going to stay. So they came back the next day. Yeah. I also want to give the board a reminder. I put it in the board run around convocation. So as Steve knows well, and Dr. Penn has said several, it's I love convocation. I love bringing faculty back. It's one of my mind candy, trying to craft it to celebrate the great work of our staff, but also of our students and have a little fun at the same time. We are returning to West Middle School. So it had been a West Middle School for decades in district, because West Middle School is one of the largest auditoriums in the area. I strategically moved it at my very first year as superintendent to a hotel because the previous superintendent had held the convocations there, and there was some memories there that we wanted to kind of just change the venue. So I'm returning for two reasons. One, to bring the staff back onto campus, but more importantly, the turf and the field out there is just gorgeous. And so what we're going to be doing is all staff are going to be receiving a t-shirt, thanks to several donations from vendors that we work closely with. And I'll have that list posted for publication, convocation, so we can thank them also there. But they were either receiving a red or a blue, and you all will be getting t-shirts as well. Thank you for sharing for size with Sonia. You'll get them regardless if you come to convocation. If you come to convocation, we're meeting for coffee down on the field. And we're going to create a giant bee, and which Dave had created, has been working through the graphic to know, okay, Horace Mann has X number of faculty, and so they're going to be standing in this part of the bee. And so optimistically, 15, 20 minutes, and we have a drone flying over and taking our pictures. So Hall faculty and staff, giant bee convocation, don't miss it. It's going to be fantastic. The second day, we're inviting in AJ Giuliani, who's a national speaker on artificial intelligence, but also just that balance of artificial intelligence used in the classroom and human behavior, and the need to always keep that at our forefront. So really excited about his presentation the second day, and thank you for Jennifer for making that all happen. I mentioned briefly earlier, but I'll repeat it. It'll be next Tuesday and Wednesday. The board run I put Wednesday and Thursday, but it'll be next Tuesday and Wednesday will be the building walkthroughs, and strategically placed Woodrow Wilson, Thomas Jefferson, Horace Mann, and West Middle School, 5 o'clock next Tuesday. We'll start at Woodrow Wilson. So this is an opportunity for you to walk through the buildings. 3 hours sounds like a long time. It goes by fast, but it really does take a long time. On Wednesday, and the other reason for picking the buildings is some work that's been completed, capital projects. You can see the product. On Wednesday, then, we will do the South Side, starting with Franklin, going over to Calvin Coolidge briefly, and then to East Middle School and then the high school. I did not put MacArthur and Roosevelt on Roosevelt. Not that we don't want to see Roosevelt, it's just it's going to be a brand new building, and if you want to see Roosevelt, no problem. If you want to see MacArthur, happy to arrange for that or tag it on to the end of one of those 2 days. I can walk you in through the building. But 5 buildings in a night is a lot.
Can you repeat where they will start?
Sure. So I'll put it in an email to everyone, just as a reminder. I'll sign you do that. But it will start at Woodrow Wilson on Tuesday, and it'll start at Franklin on Wednesday. Yeah, and Franklin's had a lot of work done. The second floor it'll be due to be completed in the middle of September, but you'll see some dramatic changes with the entry level. The high school, Dr. Penna, they removed the roof of the atrium of the staircase today. The grand staircase, and so you could look up and see the sky, because they're putting it they are going to put tarp over that tonight, right? They're putting in the structural steel to reinforce the center before they start to rebuild the floors. So, and the suite for guidance is looking spectacular. The bathrooms, girls' bathroom renovation is finishing up. So, pretty awesome. The back entrance, we had a meeting around signage recently, and some furniture that's going to be placed there, back the benches and some flowers along the entrance. The back entrance looks spectacular. So really proud of the work that's being done. Just incredible. And that's it.
Can I just add, I just remembered, I meant to bring something tonight, my yearbook. From 40 years ago, we had our class reunion, our Binghamton 40-year high school reunion. And Dr. Penna was very young and stylish in the administrator section. I'm not going to show you my picture, but I'll show you Dr. Penna looking very handsome. 40 years ago as principal, so I'll bring that next time.
Had a good reunion.
It was a good
Great
reunion.
time. The 50th year of that.
Oh, boy.
Another 10 years.
Well, thank you. Well, David, we will miss you, but I'm not sad because you're coming to the university, so I'll be, I'm sure, seeing you a lot. So.
Probably right down the hall from you, honestly.
Probably, yeah.
Probably right through the day.
So congratulations, you're going to love it. It's a great place to work. And I highly encourage you, if you can, to go to the walkthroughs. And I know 3 hours sounds like a lot, but if you're doing 5 buildings, it really goes fast. And you get to see just enough, but it's covering a lot of ground in a short amount of time. And certainly with, bring comfortable walking shoes for sure, and maybe a bottle of water if you need to hydrate. But especially with all the things we're talking about now, and to be able to get in and see these spaces, especially if the place is not familiar to you because your kids went to a different school, I think is a very important thing. And the basketball was great. I mean, our guys were down early, then they drew even, and then just slowly pulled away. And it looked like a comfortable victory, but I was a bit nervous earlier on. I felt like they got just another great win. We just win stuff. It's part of our culture, which is awesome. So congratulations to them on the Summer League championship. And with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Nobody? I gotta go. Albert? Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We're adjourned.